It's with our.
Alrighty. Dick, did you sign the card tonight?
Oh, I don't know. It was in
No,
my
I was going to
box,
ask if we had one.
We
so I
do.
put it on there.
You called it 1 minute before, or right on.
30 seconds, 20 seconds.
Evening, Sonny.
Give this guy the sign.
He's got it timed.
Not late.
Give it another 15 seconds.
Hey, stop using those four-letter words.
This is a family show.
Yeah.
Work, what's that?
Well, welcome everyone. I'd like to call to order. This is the regular meeting of the Grand Traverse County Resource Management and Administration Committee. It's Wednesday, July 13th, 2011. And if we could start with the roll call, please.
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Henschel,
Here.
Lemkool,
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Richardson,
Here.
and Commissioner Fleece is excused.
Okay, and since I realized that I should have called for the Pledge of Allegiance
Yeah.
first, we'll do
Do
that
that
now.
now. Do that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next item of business is the approval of the minutes.
Moved
First
as
for June
presented. Moved as presented.
8th. Okay, both of them? Okay.
No, just the one first. Let's do the first one.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve the June 8th minutes, seconded by Commissioner Gilman. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the corrected closed session minutes.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the May 11th, 2011 closed session minutes. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Inman,
Yes.
Henschel,
No.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yep.
Max Bauer,
No.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman,
Yes.
Yes.
Richardson.
Okay, that brings us to our first public comment, and if the clerk could read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Is there any member of the public wishing to make comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. Next item is the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as provided.
Okay, do I have a second? Support. Support by Thomas. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And I believe there are no special orders of business, so the next item is the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Road Commission Monthly Report. Number 2, Housing Liaison Report. Number 3, Conservation District Staff Report. B, approval. Number 1, amendments to Employee Vision Plan document and accompanying forms. 2, amendments to Grand Traverse County Safety Policy. 3, amendments to Bloodborne Pathogens Exposure Control Plan for Grand Traverse County. 4, MERS Annual Meeting 2011. 5, Stevenson Property Transfer.
Okay, is there any member of the public who would like any item on the consent calendar removed for further discussion? Okay, anyone on the board? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion for approval.
Support.
Okay, support by Wheelock. Motion by Thomas. Any further discussion?
I think that's a record.
Let him call.
Okay,
the
by roll call, please.
We're not done yet.
Wow, nothing got pulled.
Yeah, don't jinx it.
Commissioner Henschel,
Yes, please.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes, okay. Items on the consent calendar are approved. So now it brings us to department action items. And the first item is the Homeland Security grant funding to purchase a generator for the Health Services Building. And Mr. Brown?
Andy Brown, Director of Facilities for Grand Traverse County. Yes, Dennis wanted me to write a narrative why I would want to go with a Cummins generator, and I hope you all got that in your packet. The other companies did not meet the spec entirely. I got a little bit of experience with this particular generator because we just installed it at the jail. So in writing this spec, we knew what we wanted, and they just didn't hit it 100%. Could we use it? Probably. Any of those generators could probably be used, but in my opinion, we have 4 others that we take care of in the county. And in my opinion, even though it's more money, that's the one I think that we should buy. And that's the reason why I'm asking for approval.
Motion to approve.
That particular
Second.
one.
Okay. We have
That's
a
the-
motion.
to authorize the purchase of the Cummings.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Brown? Yes.
I guess a couple factors. One, Cummins Bridgeway is a local company, at least on this paper. They have moved out of Traverse City.
Yeah, they're in Gaylord.
You know, they're in Gaylord
Their
now.
main office.
But, you know, they would have, if we took the 5% off the 81, we'd have been right in the hunt too. So they, you know, you give them the, if you gave them the local preference, which we normally would do. But, you know, I think Danny's recommendation based on the equipment that we buy and the fact that we keep these things as uniform as possible makes sense, at least in my mind.
Danny, are they also the service providers for the other generators that we have? then?
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
so?
And even though they've moved their office from here, they still have tech services here.
That's correct.
And I would point out for the public at least that a grant from Homeland Security is paying the full cost of this. Is that?
That's right.
That's correct.
However, when we install it, wherever we're going to put it, because we don't know which building it's going to go in, at this particular time, when we install it, there's going to be a cost there.
Right, right.
And that will just be folded into the electrical cost of the building.
But we would have that cost no matter what.
That's correct.
What we purchased, okay.
Will we have to make a motion to accept the grant when it comes in? Or have we already done that?
No, this is a Homeland Security grant that's being handled and accounted for by Otsego County.
Okay.
That we do not need to do anything along those lines.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion in support of this. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have from Resource Recovery, Solid Waste Reciprocal Agreement with Wexford County. Mr. Osterhout?
Bob Ostart, Resource Recovery Department Manager. What I have before you tonight is a solid waste reciprocal agreement between Wexford County and Grand Traverse County. Wexford County initiated this agreement. They just recently changed their solid waste plan to include Grand Traverse County to import and export waste. And really this is a result of the American Waste Transfer Station Material Recycling Facility that should be in line here in hopefully in a few weeks. What it does, it allows the import of solid waste from Wexford into Grand Traverse County and also the export of solid waste from Grand Traverse County to Wexford County. Wexford County has always been in our solid waste plan, but it wasn't in the Wexford County solid waste plan. So this is an effort to clean up that plan and our SAR plan as well, so. And Scott Howard has taken a look at this agreement and found it acceptable.
They have some environmental problems down there. Does that affect us in any way? I see they just are making arrangements to make a payoff to area residents around the site. Does that affect?
No, that wouldn't affect us whatsoever.
Okay.
Only thing that would be exported or imported would be non-hazardous
Okay.
solid waste or recyclables.
Need a motion?
There's also a distinct possibility the American Waste is soon going to own that facility. So I think that's probably the biggest factor that enters in for us is because of the fact they have the state-of-the-art facility here in Traverse City, they may want to bring solid waste here to recover as much recyclable as possible out of that facility. And therefore, it makes a lot of sense. We went to a lot of effort to get this state-of-the-art facility here in our community. We should try to maximize how much materials we're recycling in it. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move to sign the solid waste reciprocating agreement with Wexford County.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this?
Can we include septage in that?
Well, that's the question I was going to ask.
What was that?
Include
Well,
septage.
No, this is solid.
We were already getting a little of that from there, but it seems like that seems to have dried up too. Okay, there's no further discussion or any questions. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, our next item is I believe it's a presentation on Next Michigan Development Corporation Initiative. And Mr. Syke?
Oh, you going to take one stick?
Good evening, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Director.
Thank you.
This is working.
This is for those of us who can't see the screen.
Yeah, the handouts there are just
Thank you.
copies of the slides that are part of this presentation. I know you just received a presentation recently at the joint meeting between the county board and the local municipalities, but this is an intent to really kind of do a little bit more detail on what the Next Michigan Development Corporation is. I know that it's kind of a concept that is taking a little time to get used to for some people, so I'm hoping that this will clarify some of the understanding of the Next Michigan Development Corporation concept. In addition to myself, this evening we also have Matt McCauley from the Northwest Michigan Council of Governments and Doug DeYoung from the Chamber of Commerce. And it's been, they've been involved in our team in terms of looking at this concept and seeing how it can work. While there's partners in this in terms of local units of government that can create this, there are certainly partners that are also involved, like the council governments, the Chamber of Commerce, the airport, and so forth, that wouldn't necessarily be signers of any type of agreement, but certainly are there to support and interact with the communities if they so choose to go forward with this. What I'd like to do is kind of go over the intent, why the legislation was, just to kind of clarify that, some of the items related to its intent. The tools, I've mentioned the tools before, but this might help a little bit more. Recap some of the benefits that the Grand Traverse County has in terms of what it can benefit the communities in Grand Traverse County, and then the next steps. If we could summarize this in terms of what the intent of Next Michigan is about, it's a cooperative partnership of local government to use incentives to attract new businesses that depend on multimodal commerce. And I think if there's anything that's different here, it's one is the cooperative partnership, in that typically economic development is conducted on a kind of a piecemeal approach by individual units of government. This is intended to allow for a partnership on economic development. The other part is really important, and it may have been something that is a little confusing to some, but the key is that part about multimodal commerce. And these incentives are really only intended for those eligible businesses that depend on multimodal commerce. Now, I'm not expecting you to read this slide, but it's certainly, this is coming right out of the statute in terms of what is an eligible business. And if you could summarize it, it would basically mean a business that's engaged in the shipment of tangible personal property via multimodal commerce. And multimodal commerce means 2 or more modes of transportation. And when I mean modes of transportation, air, roads, rail, or water, it has to be, that business has to be using at least 2 or more of those modes. For this particular area in Traverse City, we're focused mostly on air and roads because we have those readily available to us. However, from a long-term standpoint, certainly we still receive rail service here. There is a limited number of businesses that use rail, obviously, but there's a potential for that to increase. For instance, Britton Banners here in Traverse City does use rail up to Clare and then ships the rest on truck. You know, if they had an opportunity, if the rail was in a position to get rail all the way, they probably would. Water is another area in terms of long-term. What are the opportunities for that? Certainly need to be considered, but for the time being, what we're focused on is those first 2 modes of air transportation and surface road transportation.
John, I was just wondering, if I were to buy the train from the open space and put that in my store, would that qualify us as rail?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The kind of the larger intent of Next Michigan, again, is to encourage that cooperation, to do things more in a coordinated approach. It's utilizing some of the existing regional assets. And one of the things the state has identified are economic development tools, at least that they feel are a proven track record throughout Michigan. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through. You're familiar with the 5 designations that the state is making, 1 north of Clare. The first tools are the personal and real property tax abatements along with the plant rehabilitation district or development district. Just a clarification on these and how they're different. It doesn't necessarily preclude a local community from still providing those tax abatements, but if they're part of Next Michigan, those tax abatements would be approved by that Next Michigan Development Corporation and not by that local unit of government if they're a participant in Next Michigan. That's an important item to clarify. Also, these are not subject to MEDC approval, MEDC being the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Under the typical abatements, those would still have to go to the state as part of Next Michigan to streamline the process. These would go strictly through the Next Michigan Development Corporation. Obviously, it's the coordination. One of the things I think it's obvious an interest of the county is to understand where these tax abatements are occurring and have some influence on those, or at least some understanding of what's happening. These tax abatements occur right now. The county receives a notice from the township or city, but really has no involvement in that process. And those tax abatements often include, obviously, county tax dollars that are being abated. So this is an opportunity, at least for the county, to have a voice in that discussion. And again, this goes back to those eligible businesses which are involved in multimodal commerce. The Local Development Finance Authority is something that's different in terms of it's not a tool currently being applied in Grand Traverse County and is not currently available to any of the townships because they do not qualify as an urban township, which requires a population of 20,000 or more. The city and villages are able to utilize this particular tool. I think the real impact here is, which we mentioned before, is the cross-jurisdictional boundaries where we have the ability to have a local development finance authority that's going over multiple jurisdictions, still identifying key development areas, but utilizing the tax increment finance revenue from those development areas and applying them more on an even basis to meet the needs of those development areas. And I think a key piece to this, while we have other tax increment finance options here locally, we have, for instance, the city has a DDA. What the LDFA does that the DDA cannot do is capture those state taxes, which still require the approval of the state, but that's an added function. The REN zone, the Renaissance zone, which is a tax-free zone, is something that we would see only probably be applied on a limited basis. And it has some requirements in that there's a no poaching criteria, so you're not moving businesses around the state, attracting a business from, say, Grand Rapids up to Traverse City. There is still a state requirement for approval of that. However, it's more of a timing thing, too. If this were to go through, the state is required to act within a certain time period, or it's an automatic approval. So this is I believe, at least personally, that this is a type of a tool that would probably want to be applied only on a limited basis, because it has a big impact on those taxing jurisdictions. Just some of the benefits that we've kind of mentioned before. I just want to key in on the airport and the roads, and tying that the upgrade of those infrastructure with where the business growth is occurring. And where we're kind of looking, at least in our thoughts, but it certainly does not have to be that way, is that where some of this initial growth would occur is those areas where we already have the infrastructure, water, sewer, and so forth. I think this was mentioned at the joint meeting about the marketing. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation is required to market the next Michigan development communities to other areas outside the state as part of their marketing tools. So when they're out there talking about Michigan to other places, they're also going to be, or have the potential to talk about Traverse City. The interlocal agreement, as we mentioned before, it must, if it's going to be, if this application goes forward, the interlocal agreement is the first thing that needs to really be completed. And at a minimum, it has to be the county and the city. Those are the two required entities. We did a presentation in front of the City Commission on Monday as part of its study meeting, and they did have Commissioner Gilman to be their representative on the Interlocal Agreement Committee. We also did presentations in front of Blair Township and Long Lake Township yesterday, which were well received. I think Long Lake is probably going to have more of a resolution of support at this time, but they could join in. Blair was supportive of it. We've also received support from Garfield and East Bay Townships, and they're all ready to participate in the interlocal agreement discussion, which we hope to kick off here in a couple weeks. That interlocal agreement would not be signed, like I mentioned earlier, by the partners, but certainly there's an opportunity to lend their support, perhaps through resolutions of support. And as mentioned before, this interlocal agreement must be approved by all those parties, and as well as the governor prior to that application. So it has to go to the state, then come back here, and then submit it as a formal application. It's kind of been our thought in terms of this working group that's been looking at this, if there's an interlocal agreement drafted, that it would help to have staff along with representatives from the various boards and commissions. We do right now have a representative from Garfield, East Bay, the city, and Blair Township, and we would be looking for a representative from the county board. We do have the county administrator and city manager involved in terms of willing to sit down, and we would be utilizing the EDC attorney to help us with the legal matters in terms of crafting that interlocal agreement in accordance with the statute. So hopefully this may have presented a little opportunity for some clarification. I'm certainly available for questions, but that's about it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners participate in the working group in drafting an interlocal agreement for Next Michigan Development Corporation, and that the Board of Commissioners representative be County Commissioner Ross Richardson, given he is our representative on County EDC and also chairs our Resource Management Committee.
Support.
Okay. Well, let's deal with the motion, then we can, if there's any questions for John. Well, Mr. Henschel.
I haven't heard Ross say he's willing to do it, but I'll say I'm willing to do it if Ross isn't.
Well, I am willing to do it, and actually, well, I'll make more comments a little later in the meeting, but the county EDC seems to be maybe going away. Okay, so in a sense, that's sort of created a little bit of a hole in terms of some of the things I've been doing. But any other discussion on the motion on the appointment for the representative? Commissioner Gilman.
Just see it as an opportunity to create yet another arm of government, another step away from accountability to the people, complicate government more. Once upon a time, a business used to be able to buy a piece of land. Maybe it might, require some zoning alterations or even within existing zoning, and not have to go through a dance to have low taxes, low regulations, red tape not in the way. And now there's so much red tape, there's so much in taxes, there's so many restrictions that you almost have to have something like this. I think it's unnecessary. I will vote no.
Commissioner Wheelock?
One of the comments we had last night, John and I were both at Long Lake Township for the presentation last night, was pretty extensive discussion about the fact of getting the road commission involved in this too, because it's a key piece. The infrastructure that we're talking about developing and getting these monies to help us improve, a sizable piece of that is roads, and at least at this point, roads are going to be our primary mode of transportation. So, it's good to do that.
Okay, Lee? John, quick question. It was my recollection at the joint township meeting, and was it my understanding that if, a couple points, one, if a local unit of government did not participate, then there could not be a project from that local unit of government jurisdiction. The second issue was that in terms of the specific type of zoning, if one was to change, for example, a Renaissance zone or ag zone or whatever, that would also require the local unit of government to approve, and that this particular committee, or how the interlocal agreement will work, would not have the authority to move forward with some type of zoning change without the local unit of government approval. Is that correct?
On the first one, if that local unit of government is not a signer onto that agreement, then these tools cannot apply to that community.
Okay.
But that could change. If
Right.
the amendment,
Because they could join later.
Yeah, you can always amend that agreement. And when you're talking about the zone change, I think what you're saying in terms of if this next Michigan Development Corporation were to say define a Renaissance zone in a community and that community didn't want it there, the process would be for really, it depends on how the interlocal agreement is structured, but the intent of the next Michigan Development Corporation is to have that power within that next Michigan Development Corporation to make those determinations. Because the idea is to streamline the process. For instance, when the Ag Renaissance Zone for shoreline fruit came forward, it went to the township, to the county, to the state. This process is intended to go one-stop shop right to the next Michigan Development Corporation. That's how the intent is. It's not really to allow for that unit of government to kind of determine whether it would have that zone or not. It's really up to the next Michigan Development Corporation, provided those areas are already predefined as development areas. Now, again, it all rests back on the interlocal agreement.
Yeah, I just want to, I've received a number of emails questioning that issue. And the issue is, the county
per se, because all the local units of government have zoning boards, they've not designated Grand Traverse County as being responsible for their zoning or planning. So the issue is, out there is that we have not, at this point, played a role in zoning and planning that would supersede local unit of government authority.
Right, and a clarification, that when you mentioned zoned, you're kind of mixing a few of the terms. Renaissance zone is not the same as a zoning ordinance or a zoning district in terms of land use planning and zoning.
So they would still have to comply with the local zoning
Absolutely.
areas.
That's, in terms of local, this has nothing to do with planning and zoning whatsoever. This is purely economic development, and any types of these activities would still have to
comply with
local
zoning
master
areas.
plans and local zoning and zoning ordinances.
All right, that's all I need to know.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Henschel.
It's my understanding that the drafting part is really a crucial part as to how this is going to operate. And, my concern would be that local control is maintained. I'd like to see an opt-in versus an opt-out for the local units of government, so that it's not just a rubber stamp passing through, that they actually have to look at what's going on the projects that are being presented. And that's the reason I wanted to be involved, because it looks like this thing's going to happen.
Any other comments or questions? I would just like to, I think we're all still feeling our way on this whole thing. I'm not sure we totally understand it. What appeals to me about it is the idea that hopefully we can streamline the process to, bring businesses to, the county. And the other thing that really appeals to me, and I'd like to echo Commissioner Wheelock on this, is the idea that, we'll be able to start focusing on the infrastructure needs of those businesses, make this a more attractive place to do business than it is already. And looking long range, I understand it's going to be focused on the airport and, the road system, but looking down the road, if we can, bring back the rail system that we, that we used to have, that's just barely hanging by a thread right now. If we can utilize, we actually have a couple locations right now that qualify as deep water ports. If we can find a way to utilize them, either in tourism or commerce, that would be great. Yes.
I want to get back to Commissioner Henschel's question. If a local unit of government opts in, and for some reason that particular local unit of government disagrees with the project going into the whatever zone it would be, and the local unit of government would the local unit of government have, I guess it's up to the interlocal agreement, but I'm just going to throw this out, the option of opting out, and therefore would stop that project from occurring in their local unit of government.
That's my point, is...
Yeah, so the only thing, my point on this whole thing is we've never, and on the Board of Commissioners, and forming this thing, and I don't know if this thing is going to be considered a county committee or a community committee, I don't know what it is, but an entity of its own. I just don't want to have the public and the local units of government see this as the county superseding or telling them how to plan and zone within their own jurisdiction. That's my only caution on this. So however you deal with it in your interlocal agreement would be fine. I just want to spell that out clearly.
Right, well, obviously, it's all going to be in that interlocal agreement, and like I said, I'm not sure any of us really knows enough about it at this point.
Well,
Sure.
I wasn't talking about opting into the program or opting out of the program. I'm talking about the projects themselves.
Right.
I want them to be approved as an opt-in by the local townships. Versus saying, if you don't object in 40 days, we're doing it. Yeah. I don't think that's the way to maintain control. That's the rubber stamp method.
You're concerned that next Michigan might come along, decide to establish some sort of a tax abatement zone within a township, basically without necessarily asking the township if they even agree with the idea.
Right, they would say, you have 40 days to say you don't like it, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I like the local control saying, present this to their board, and if they like it, they approve it, and it moves forward.
Okay, well, however this motion turns out, obviously, you should be, come and be involved in the drafting of the interlocal, agreement as well.
It would be an open meeting, published,
Oh,
posted
absolutely.
and everything else.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I would
Okay,
think.
what the motion is to support drafting an interlocal agreement for Next Michigan Corporation
Right.
involving the city of Traverse City, the county of Grand Traverse, and the
Whoever's
townships who wish to participate, and appoint me as the county commission representative for the drafting of the local agreement, of the interlocal agreement.
it's only
I mean,
agreement only.
that's
That's it.
That's as far as the appointment goes at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Any further discussion? Okay, probably by roll call.
Commissioner Lemkool?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman?
No.
Inman?
Yes.
Henschel?
No.
Richardson?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. John, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the sheriff's office with a opportunity to purchase some police cars.
Good evening. Nate Elger with the Sheriff's Office. You may or may not be aware that the Crown Vics that we've used for several years are out of production and are no longer going to be produced, period. And there are several other vendors that are going to be making police packages, and two of those three vendors, they're still prototypes. They're not even on the road yet. We have an opportunity through Signature Auto, who we awarded the bid to earlier this year for the purchase of patrol vehicles, to purchase additional vehicles yet this year. When I talked to the fleet manager, he had 20 left. And at that time, after conversation with Mr. Aloya and Mr. Bott, I requested that he reserve 7 for us. The cost of each vehicle is $22,000, just under that. And what we would request is that we be allowed to move forward with 7 vehicles for purchase this year, and we would take those 7 vehicles off of our 2012 budget requests. There's a cost savings here. While we don't know the dimensions necessarily of the Ford Interceptor, which will be the Ford police package, or the Chevy Capri, which will be the Chevy police package necessarily, we don't know what those are. We do know that the light bars we currently have on our Ford Crown Vics, more than likely the cages that we have in our Crown Vics and the consoles will most likely not fit in those vehicles. And there is a cost for purchase of new light bars, which is about $1,600 each, cages and consoles, as well as installation and removal that would be incurred if we had different vehicles. The Crown Vics that we have right now in fleet would be replaced. The equipment would go into new vehicles, so that at least we would not have to purchase the new equipment. So we are hoping that you would approve the purchase of 7 vehicles from Signature Auto in 2011.
Where's the money coming from?
That's a good question. On page 87, I tried to be very brief in my summary as to how we could purchase the vehicles. No matter what we do, we will write a check if a decision is made to purchase 7 patrol vehicles. That can't be avoided under any circumstance. So then it comes down to how does this impact our budget? In discussing this with Dennis Aloya, the county administrator, we had two options. One was to recreate or use the motor pool, which we have not used for a number of years. An issue with going that route is that we would have to have a cash advance from the general fund. And we're trying to avoid those cash advances because they have a effect on our fund balance in the general fund. Our recommended alternative would be to purchase the vehicles directly from the capital improvement fund. We do have the cash in that fund to make the purchase. I think the purchase would be approximately $154,000 for 7 vehicles. There is sufficient cash to do it and a fund balance that would need to be budgeted to cover that purchase. The only consequence from doing that is that pretty much taps us out in that fund at this point. We have 3 projects that are in process. We have some contingency money built into those. One is the New World System applications that we're doing for records and public safety. I'm not sure if we'll use the contingency money that we have set aside there. And we also have some imaging applications for both the district court and the circuit court that have contingency money built into them. So I don't know exactly how much of budget funds will be available. Conservatively, though, we can cover the purchase, and we could potentially have $50,000 left depending on how those 3 projects close out, but we're not even close on the imaging projects. We're kind of just starting those. So our recommendation, should the board agree with this, would be to purchase from the CIP fund. In effect, that allows us to defer the expenditure to next year. We would transfer the vehicles back to the general fund and recognize the expense in the 2012 budget.
May I make another point? Sorry. The Crown Vics are $22,000. The nearest vehicle to that in terms of cost last year was the Dodge Chargers, and those are $24,000. I've heard that the Chevy Capris and the Interceptors may be as high as $30,000. So per vehicle, if we did, the Crown Vic would still be the lowest cost vehicle out there with the exception of the Impala, which is a front-wheel drive vehicle and much smaller.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we authorize the purchase of 7 Crown Vics from Signature Auto with funding to be taken from the Capital Improvement Fund.
Support.
Support.
The Ford Interceptor, that's based on a Taurus platform?
It is on a Taurus platform, yes.
What about the Chevy Capri?
The Chevy Capri is, I don't know which platform that's on. I think it's a new vehicle.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's smaller than the old Capri, and it's smaller than the Crown Vic, but it's larger than the Interceptor.
Is it a rear-wheel drive or front-wheel?
Yes, it is
it is
rear-wheel.
rear-wheel. Okay.
Yes.
Because Chevy doesn't really make a rear-wheel drive right now, do they?
Nope.
I don't know. Not in a vehicle. I think just in SUVs.
Yeah, okay.
But it is an 8-cylinder rear-wheel drive.
Okay.
And by far the largest of the 3 new cars.
I guess, it seems kind of strange to talk about large vehicles, but, if you ever have the opportunity to look at what equipment they try to carry in those patrol cars, I can't imagine how you would get it in a Ford Taurus.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. The Crown Vics have served us well. We've basically used Crown Vics from the days of the Plymouths.
Oh yeah, it's there.
The Crown Vics got started shortly after the Plymouth Furies went out, and that would have been mid-70s, probably.
Plymouth a what?
That's before the undersheriff's time.
Before he was born. But the fact is, we've used Crown Vics for probably close to 30 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
It's our primary vehicle.
I wanted to commend our sheriff and the department on the foresight of seeing, if we wait till next year to buy these cars, we're going to be hitting like a first run of cars that is kind of a new model for sheriff's departments. And, why we don't want to be the guinea pigs on this. So even though it might seem to be a stretch on Dean's department to make the county work, I think it's the best move for our county.
Well, thank you.
Oh, and the other thing is just the transfer of the equipment that goes in the car, which is what, $3,000 or $4,000?
Easily.
I mean, because obviously all that stuff is not going to fit.
That's correct.
In whatever vehicles. What kind of experience have you folks had with the with the 4x4s? I know you have a few in your fleet, but.
Yes, we do. The Ford Explorers seem to be holding up very well. The Ford Expeditions, if it were up to our mechanic, he would not suggest Ford Expeditions. We've had transmission problems, we've had engine problems, we've had radiator problems. And in fact, when we talked to him recently about the SUV purchases for next year, he said you need to buy the Tahoes. You need to get away from the Ford Expedition. Unfortunately, the Ford Explorer will no longer produce 8-cylinder vehicles unless you go with, I think it's the Eddie Bauer and the SLT package, which is significantly more expensive. So it's a mixed bag. You need those 4x4s, but they are costly to maintain and operate.
So, I mean, so you wouldn't recommend, for instance, going to a whole fleet of 4x4s?
Well, not Ford Expedition 4x4. I would go to an Chevy SUV.
I mean, does Ford or Chevy make a police version of?
Yes, they do. Chevy Tahoe has a 2-wheel and a 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
However, we don't have any Chevy Tahoes,
No,
so
they're-
that would be something that we would have to experiment with too, I believe.
Yes, and the state police has extensive experience with
Even,
them.
if I'm not mistaken, even the SLTs or the Eddie Bauer package on the Ford Explorers is probably less than the Tahoe, though. I mean, the Tahoe's inexpensive.
It may be. I'm not sure. We didn't order any Ford Explorers last year because of this reason, and I know the Tahoes were running about $28,000, but that was quite a bit more than the Expedition at that point.
Oh, really?
Quick question, Nate. Where does this, upon the acquisition of the 7 vehicles, where does that put your total fleet at? I mean, in terms of your turning time, is this something that you need to, the age of your fleet, where does this put you for the next coming years?
We have 9 vehicles right now identified that are 2003 or older,
Okay.
and they have to be replaced. What we intend to do with these 7 vehicles is put 3 into the fleet or 4 into the fleet now and mothball 3. And then sometime next year, bring the next 3 or 4 vehicles that need to be replaced in 2012 and push them out. We are also going to come and ask for our 2012 budget for at least 1 SUV because our K9 Expedition has lost an engine and a radiator within the last 3 months, and it's the oldest vehicle in our active patrol cars, so we need to have that replaced soon. So we have, every one of those vehicles will be used and replaced, and we have 9 vehicles identified to do it.
Just to back up, our second question. The take-home policy that the Sheriff's Department has had for many years, I know I'm very supportive of it because it just shows more police cars on the road and tells our visitors to go away. They got too many police up here. But the second issue is over time, has it extend? Really have you demonstrated the extension of the life of the vehicle rather than just keep turning it on the road, turning it on shift to shift? That it's the ability to continue to extend the fleet farther out and saving money. Has that analysis been done and looked at and stuff like that?
I believe it has. There's a cost to that, and the cost is the fuel associated with the transport of the officers to and from work.
Right.
But we have vehicles that are 8 and 9 and many more years older that are still being used because of the limited miles that the officers are putting on those cars annually. You put 100 miles plus per day on a patrol car. So if you're cycling that patrol car 3 shifts a day, you're putting 300 or more miles on that vehicle a day. And those aren't easy miles. Those are the miles plus idle time in driveways and idle time in parking lots. And so they're running for 10 hours.
Right.
So, yeah, we have experienced that. What you need to realize as well is at any given time, depending on the shift breakup, you could have 17 cars on the road. And if you have those 17 cars, you're going to replace that many cars
right
anyway. And you have to break that. It's a complicated
right.
equation, but I believe that this program has really saved a lot of money in the long run and has allowed officers to respond to complaints to and from work, the visibility that I hear it every so often. I passed 3 patrol cars from Kingsley to Traverse City, and I said, good.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear. And
right.
But I believe it has. And we have a very large fleet. In fact, I think Dean produced a spreadsheet the other day that said we had 95 vehicles, and I almost tripped on myself when I saw that. I couldn't believe it. But when you whittle that down, that includes ERT vehicles, command vehicles, jail work crew transports, transport vans, command vehicles, things of that nature. So we really have about 59 cars that are used in patrol and in the DB.
All right, well, congratulations on the recommendation. You did a good job.
Okay, sorry, I had a long answer.
Nate, are all the cars that you bought, like, I know you bought a few cars early this year, and you bought some last year, are they all in, assigned use now?
Yes,
or-
yes.
Okay.
We have 2 black cars, 2 brand-new Crown Vics that we just got that are striped up and ready to go. Those have not been assigned, but they are going to somebody.
Okay. And in every case, when you buy a new car, I'm assuming you're buying a Crown Vic anyway.
Yes.
You are able to transfer the equipment?
Yes.
I mean, the interior equipment?
If that vehicle replaces a fleet vehicle, which I think you'll see more of, yes, that equipment transfers.
And I did get a hold of the list. I only got it today, so I haven't had a lot of time to look at it, of all the cars. But it seems like your average patrol car is running somewhere around 20,000, 25,000 miles a year. Does that sound about right?
I believe that's correct.
So you're looking at about a 6-year life out of that. By the time they had 120, 130,000 miles, it's getting time to think about replacement.
Usually, mileage alone is not the only consideration, and you'll see some of our vehicles are going to be estimated to have 150,000 miles and 8 years on it, but mileage is a consideration.
Okay.
So we're going to be pushing 6 to 7 years, an average lifespan of a vehicle.
And are all of your sworn officers assigned a vehicle?
Every sworn officer is assigned a vehicle. Not every sworn officer takes a vehicle to and from home.
Dean?
Throughout the budget process, or as part of the budget process, we'll present additional information. Commissioner Richardson referred to a vehicle inventory. We'll certainly provide that to the rest of the commissioners. We've got a little bit of work we're doing on that, but we did purchase earlier, this is just general information, from the CIP fund this year, 4 Crown Victorias that were approved in the budget. Last year, 7 Ford Crown Victorias were purchased for patrol from the CIP fund as well, just to kind of give you a little history of the counts. And those are down historically. The vehicle purchases for the sheriff's office, not just patrol, would average 10 to 12 vehicles. So the last few years, we have been down on our vehicle purchases.
And
So when does this catch up to us?
Well, hopefully, hopefully the numbers dropping is indicative of the good vehicles. The Crown Vics, we've had no problems with. When we had Tauruses and Impalas, they were 5 years and less. Front ends would go out and they couldn't be used. These Crown Vics have been great for us.
And I think a lot needs to be, can be said about the maintenance program that they have. They have very detailed maintenance records on all of their vehicles, and that certainly helps with maintaining the vehicle and keeping it, we need to keep the vehicles on the road as long as we can. I think they do a great job with that.
And this assigned vehicles to the officers actually works in our advantage in that respect because they take pride in their vehicles. They know that they're responsible for maintaining it, so it actually gets them from point A to point B. They usually have to do their maintenance off duty at a cost to them, so it really does help us in that regard.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor to purchase 7 vehicles, Crown Victorias. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And just one point, is it okay if we execute a purchase order
You want that
tomorrow?
as part of the motion?
Yes. I'd like to lock those vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, I would amend that motion to...
Why don't we do a separate motion?
All right, Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize Finance Department issue a purchase order dated tomorrow for the purchase of these 7 vehicles.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Potential.
Potential?
I think it was. There's somebody down there.
And Dean, you understood that as from the CIP fund, right?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Okay. Okay, moving right along. Administration, we have a resolution on the Grand Traverse Band.
Move for approval.
Support.
Second.
Anybody want to read the,
Dick made the motion.
anyone like to read the resolution?
No, we read it.
I read it.
Fine. For the public, we probably
Okay,
should.
well, I will at least cut to the chase. I would like to at least read the
I'll
final
therefore-
paragraph, which is, be it resolved by this Board of Commissioners that Grand Traverse County acknowledge and thank the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians for their participation and partnerships throughout the community, and especially in Grand Traverse County, which truly help to make the area in which we work, play, and raise our families a better place. Do I have a motion?
You already got one.
Dick made the motion, I supported.
I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, you guys, you haven't even been here an hour yet, so.
You're determined to just keep,
Okay, any unfinished business? Any new business? This brings us to second public comment. Since we have no public, I'll assume that we don't have any. Commissioner committee reports. Commissioner Inman.
Well, this isn't really a committee report. I just want to personally thank, I guess from the bottom of my heart, that the card that the Board of Commissioners sent me regarding the passing away of my brother Mike, along with the other departments within the county, human resources and the county staff and county individuals on their own, either sent me a card or sent me an email, and I just want to let you know I appreciate you thinking of me.
Okay. Commissioner Lemko.
Yeah, we have a forum tomorrow on passenger rail in Michigan, and experts will be discussing 3 exciting projects, Woodward Light Rail, the Ann Arbor to Hull commuter line, and Detroit to Chicago high-speed rail. Special guest speaker will be Kurt Stittle from the Director of Michigan Department of Transportation, Megan Owens, Director of Transit Riders United, and Conan Smith, Washtenaw County Commissioner, and Traverse City State Representative Wayne Schmidt. That'll be at 4 o'clock at the library, and we'll go from 4 to 6. And that's tomorrow. I just sent an email to Katie, so hopefully she'll pass it on to you guys. I forgot that I should have done that.
Okay. And I did comment on the county EDC, Economic Development Corporation. There seems to be a move by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and this is an administrative ruling, not something that requires evident legislative approval. And what they are wanting to do or suggesting doing is regionalizing the fund, taking our, at this point, $1 million plus, and combining it with 9 other counties in northwest lower Michigan, and having the fund administered by a nonprofit, of which at this point I'm not familiar with. I don't even know what the name of it is. But if this happens, honestly, there's not a whole lot left for the county EDC to do. But and it may be happening quite quickly. But I will keep you updated as I get more information.
I'm not sure it's a done deal either yet, though.
I hope they don't take that out of Grand Traverse County.
Well,
that would
we went through all the motions. We redrafted the reuse plan. We showed our interest in regionalization when we gave 45th Parallel Furniture Company up in Elk Rapids a loan, and so forth. But yet, and of course, the $1 million that resides in Grand Traverse County is the biggest piece of the part of the pie that they're putting together. Unfortunately, state of Michigan has never really considered it our money. They've always considered it, grant money on loan, as it were.
But yet, we've got the most successful EDC in the whole state of Michigan almost. Why would they take it away from us?
Well, you would have to ask the people in Lansing that.
Because they like
I just think that we ought to go on record here somehow and be able to put something together to determine.
Well, when we have more information, maybe later in the month I can bring you more information.
That would be nice if you brought that forward, so we might be able to do that.
Okay, that's fine. Which brings us to notices and our announcements. I will at least read the two here. August 19th is the County Wellness Barbecue, which is at the Civic Center, and it's something that we put on for all of county staff. And on August 24th, the Grand Traverse County Commission is having a joint meeting with the Tribal Council of the Ottawa and Chippewa Indians at the Peshawba Town government offices.
Please fill out and let us know when you might be able to do the wellness barbecue so that we can have that information in there, so we can, each of us should have a little stint there to be able to make sure most of us cook the meat out and back, and then have greeters that greet each of the employees as they come in. So for the new commissioners, if you haven't been there, this is an opportunity to meet the employees that we have for our county.
Commissioner Henschel.
Just a brief announcement. I got a call from my wife this afternoon, and our 2-year-old son Isaiah has used the big boy potty all day.
Ooh, that's a big deal.
That's the best news I've heard in the
Commissioner
last
Wheelock,
30
gotta
days.
watch that early time.
I can't top that, but I will be out of town all week next week, so I will miss Ways and Means next week.
And I may
And
be
then
out of,
the
I may be out of town for
budget
part of the week, but.
I don't think I've gotten a copy in my computer. I have the hard copy, but I've not received the, does anybody
The
else?
email, I haven't, no.
Of
what?
Of what now?
The prioritization.
The prioritization ranking?
We're supposed to get a link,
I
right?
got mine half done.
Prioritization
Well,
ranking.
I know, I carried
Fun as
mine, I
hell.
carried mine home from the meeting the other day.
Well, I know I carried, but it says that it was supposed to be sent by email.
So we could do it
Oh, I haven't
online.
gotten that.
And we're supposed to do it online, so I have,
I'll check with Katie.
Would you check
tomorrow.
and-
Yep.
I have not gotten that in.
I haven't gotten it online either. I
Yeah.
have it done on
Yeah,
paper,
right.
but
We should have asked John when he was
I don't
here.
even have it on
And-
paper.
And they're going to get mine on.
you know, Larry may not have
Oh,
gotten
it
a
must,
copy of
it must have got it
packet.
handed out at the
Yeah, it
committee
did.
meeting. That's why I
Yeah.
haven't gotten it.
So check in your box, you might find it up there or something.
It's not in my box.
Oh, so,
Commiss-
anyway, we'd like to have
Well,
it.
we'll try to figure that
Okay.
out. Commissioner Maxbauer.
well, I just wanted to say, as long as we're sharing personal stories, Traverse City's own Natalia Lalonde, who went to Eastern Elementary and Central High School, has got her first magazine cover. She is on Import Tuner, the July issue.
What is
So,
import tuner?
You know, it's a car magazine.
Okay,
People with old rusty
Everybody has a
Fiats,
garage.
probably.
yep, that's right. So,
Okay, I believe there's no need for a closed session, is that correct, Dean?
Yep.
A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
Congratulations. I think
Yeah.
you might have the record for this year.
yeah,
Hour, 3 minutes, not too
that
bad.
wouldn't take much.
This is the way it's supposed to go.